Statement, and I would now like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. اسمحوا لي.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this important meeting on the implementation of Resolution 1540. This meeting is of particular importance given the threat represented by the acquisition of weapons of mass destruction, their components and delivery systems by terrorist groups. The worst violations of 1540 is the assistance of certain countries and intelligence services to support the terrorist groups, to train them, provide them support to the point of giving them chemical toxic weapons, which are then used against the military and the civilians. The representatives of the self-same countries are seeking to deviate the meeting today from its goals by raising topics which are not on the agenda, in order to impede our efforts and prevent the Council from having a true, serious debate on the implementation of 1540. We would like to recall in this context that it's these countries which opposed to the draft by Russia and China aimed at fighting the acquisition of chemical weapons by terrorist chemical groups in Syria, chemical weapons in Syria and Iraq. It's the same countries who oppose the efforts to making the Middle East a weapons of mass destruction-free zone in order to protect Israel. The Israeli delegate made a statement which is a web of lies without any foundation. It is almost comical, even pitiful, that members of the international community have to be in this room and listen to these allegations and lies coming from a representative of an occupying power, which continues occupying Arab territories and continues supporting terrorist groups, in particular al-Nusra in the separation area. This country has a nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons arsenal, with the protection of the Western countries who are permanent members of the Council. The support of Israel to terrorist groups in Syria has been proven and by a number of evidence that we have provided to the Council. For those who are still doubtful, I encourage them to read the report published by the Wall Street Journal on the basis of the Confession of Terrorists on the 19th June 2017. It was published. We are constantly warning against the danger of terrorist groups acquiring weapons of mass destruction, Daesh and al-Nusra and al-Qaeda. We have sent more than 108 messages to the Council, to the 1540 Committee, representative of Disarmament Affairs, Joint Investigative Mechanism, and all of the committees and bodies relevant under Security Council. And our messages contained documented information which points out the countries who provided chemical weapons, mustard gas, chlorine, sarin to terrorist groups, for them to then be used against civilians. And I would like to also say that in Turkish intelligence gave sarin to terrorist groups in Syria. After this product arrived from Libya in 2013, Erdogan facilitates the passage of these substances to Daesh and Nusra and Syria. And this is the most serious violation of the provisions of Resolution 1540. Mr. President, we are still waiting for the bodies and specialist mechanism to react to this information and to treat them with the seriousness that they deserve. We also wait for these informations to be reflected in the reports on the weapons on the chemical weapons and their use by terrorist groups. This is not simply a declaration made internationally. They are in the hands of terrorism and used in many regions in Syria. In particular, in country Kun, most recently, the attacks were premeditated and pushed by the regional and international forces in order to tarnish the image of Syria and justify the attacks against the Syrian forces who are fighting terrorism. These accusations and allegations that we have heard in these days from Western representatives, from the delegates representing these countries today, all of these declarations is part of the political blackmail war, the very low war which now systematically accompanies every success by the Syrian army and its allies as we combat terrorism. These lies also systematically accompany the negotiations amongst various Syrian parties in Astana, in Geneva, in order to impede the efforts made by the Syrian government so as to arrive at a political solution without outside interference. Mr. President, we have a constant position of principle. We condemn the use of chemical weapons and any and all weapons of mass destruction. This is a crime against humanity and an unacceptable act, an immoral act, unjustifiable, whatever the circumstances surrounding it. On this basis, my country ratified the Convention on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, and we have implemented all of our commitments. My country ended its chemical weapons program in record time, which is unprecedented in the history of the organization. And this was noted in the report of the joint mission. This was brought to the attention of the Council in June 2014. To conclude, my country has always rejected any and all allegations coming from certain Western administrations. These allegations about the use of chemical and toxic weapons by the regular Syrian forces. On the basis of our commitments, we have fully cooperated within the framework of the inquiry carried out by international bodies and have done so since 2014. We have provided any and all information needed not to facilitate the investigation to make sure that it's credible and impartial. But some in this organization will never dare tell the truth for reasons which are well known to you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Syrian